The Hells Angels biker followed the little girl's screams into a faded studio flat, and his rage shattered every locked door. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. I didn't have time to think. The door slammed open with a force that rattled the hinges, and I quickly turned to face the danger. There he was, a man who had clearly been waiting for this moment, his dark eyes fixed on Emily and me with malice. He was tall, his broad shoulders hunched slightly as he stepped inside, his boots scraping against the floor like nails on a chalkboard. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know who this guy was, but I knew he wasn't here for a friendly visit. My body reacted before my mind had a chance to catch up. I stepped in front of Emily, blocking her from view as my hands instinctively moved to the knife hidden in my boot. There was no way in hell I was going to let anyone hurt her. The man looked me over slowly, sizing me up with a sneer, clearly unfazed by the looming threat I presented. "You're gonna regret this, tough guy," he spat, his voice cold and mocking. I didn't respond. My grip tightened around the hilt of the knife, and I took a step forward, narrowing the gap between us. The man didn't flinch, but he did raise his hand slowly. "I'm just here for the girl," he said. "She's got something that belongs to someone who isn't too happy about it." My blood ran cold. What the hell was he talking about? My mind raced, trying to piece together any connection between Emily and this guy. She was just a kid. What could she possibly have that someone would want badly enough to send a man like him after her? He must have seen the confusion in my eyes because he smirked. She doesn't even know it, does she? She's a pawn in a game she doesn't understand. I felt a surge of rage, but I kept my cool. I wasn't going to let this bastard intimidate me or Emily. "Whatever game you're playing," I said, my voice low and steady, "it ends here." The man's smirk faltered for a second before he resumed his stance. "That's funny, because I was just about to say the same thing," he replied, reaching into his jacket. My muscles tensed as I watched his every move, but it was too late. He pulled out a gun. It wasn't aimed at me, but that didn't matter. He was dangerous, and the weapon was an immediate threat. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't move. I had to think fast. The man laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the room. "You think you can stop me, old man?" He waved the gun lazily. "You're not in control here." The weight of the situation crashed down on me. If he pulled that trigger, everything could change in an instant. Emily's terrified face flashed in my mind, and I couldn't let that happen. I needed to protect her at all costs. The silence in the room was deafening as we stared each other down. My pulse was racing, and my body was coiled tight, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. But the seconds ticked by, and I could hear Emily's soft breathing behind me. She was scared. I could feel her trembling, and it made my stomach twist with anger. This wasn't her fight. It never should have been. Without warning, I moved. I lunged at the man, knocking the gun from his hand just as he tried to raise it. The gun skittered across the floor, and in that instant, everything seemed to slow down. The man stumbled backward, momentarily thrown off balance. I grabbed his collar, pulling him in close so he could feel the heat of my rage. "You're going to stay away from her," I growled, my voice like gravel. He struggled, but I was stronger. I slammed him into the wall with a force that left him gasping for air. "Who do you work for?" I demanded. "Who sent you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for something at his belt. I wasn't giving him the chance. I hit him again, this time with the palm of my hand against his throat, pinning him in place. "Tell me," I snarled. The man's eyes were wide now, filled with fear as he realized I wasn't going to let up. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he gasped out, I don't know. I was just hired." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Someone had hired this guy, but he didn't even know who. I had no clue what this meant, but I did know one thing. Emily was somehow caught in the middle of something far bigger than I had imagined. The thought made my blood run cold. What had I walked into? What was this world that Emily had stumbled into? As I shoved the man back, he stumbled to the ground, breathing heavily. "You're not leaving here until I get answers," I said, my voice sharp. But before I could say another word, Emily spoke from behind me. He's telling the truth," she whispered. I don't know what's going on either. I turned to look at her, her wide eyes filled with fear. What do you mean? I asked, my voice softening. Emily took a deep breath. I didn't want to get anyone involved. But I overheard something about a deal. I'm just a kid. I don't know what any of it means. My mind was spinning. A deal? What deal? What had she heard? I had more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. This was far from over. I stepped back from the man, my breath coming fast, the rage still burning in my chest. Emily was still behind me, her eyes wide with fear. She had spoken the truth. She didn't know what was going on either. It didn't make sense, but there was something in her voice, something that told me she wasn't lying. Whoever was behind this was playing a dangerous game, and Emily was caught in the middle of it. I couldn't let her face this alone. Not now. Not ever. I turned back to the man, still on the floor, gasping for air. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his forehead. His earlier bravado had faded, replaced by something closer to fear. You're not going anywhere until I get some answers, I growled, my voice cold. The man nodded quickly, his hands raised in surrender. I told you I don't know much. They just told me to find her and bring her back, he said, his voice shaky. Who's they? Who sent you? I pressed, my patience wearing thin. He shook his head. I don't know. Just some guys. They said it was important that the girl, Emily, was part of something big. His words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Emily's name. They were talking about her like she was some kind of pawn. I turned to her, my mind racing. What do you know about this, Emily? I asked, my voice softer now. She hesitated, looking down at the ground. I don't know what they want, she whispered, her voice trembling. I overheard them talking about a deal. Something to do with my family. But I don't understand any of it. I ran a hand through my hair, frustration mounting. This was getting deeper, and I was getting pulled in further than I had planned. Deal? What kind of deal? Emily looked up at me, her face pale. I don't know. They said something about an inheritance. My mom. Her voice faltered, and she looked away, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. My heart sank. Your mom? What does she have to do with any of this? Emily shook her head, looking lost. I don't know. I don't know where she is. She left when I was little. I don't remember her. The man on the floor shifted, trying to sit up. You've got no idea what you're dealing with, kid, he said, his voice hoarse. This isn't just about you. This is bigger than anything you can imagine. I grabbed him by the collar and pulled him up, my grip tight. You better start making sense, or I'll make you, I warned. The man winced, but didn't resist. It's a cartel, he said, his eyes darting around nervously. They've been looking for her for years. She's tied to something that can bring them down. Your mom, she knew something. That's why they came after her. And now they think Emily knows too. I felt a chill run down my spine. A cartel? They were after Emily? This was so much bigger than I had anticipated. What exactly is she supposed to know? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The man swallowed hard. I don't know, but I do know this. They won't stop until they get what they want, and they'll hurt anyone who gets in their way. I released him, stepping back to process everything he had just said. The weight of it all was starting to sink in. Emily's past, her mother's involvement with something dangerous, and now a cartel targeting her. This wasn't just about saving her anymore. It was about stopping a far-reaching danger. I won't let them hurt you, I said to Emily, my voice firm. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. But what can we do? She whispered, her voice breaking. I turned to the man on the floor, my mind working in overdrive. You're going to help us, I said, my tone brokering no argument. You're going to tell me everything you know about this cartel, and you're going to help me protect her. He shook his head. I can't. They'll kill me. They'll kill both of you. I crouched down in front of him, my face inches from his. If you want to survive this, you're going to help us. If not, I'll let you walk out that door, and you can face whatever comes next. Your choice. The man looked at me for a long moment, his eyes flicking between me and Emily. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I don't have much, he muttered, but I know where they're keeping her mother. If you want to stop this, you'll need to find her first. The revelation hit me like a freight train. Emily's mother was alive. I turned to Emily, who was staring at me with wide eyes. We're going to get her back, Emily, I said, determination flooding my voice. We're going to stop this. Together. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me as we stood there, the tension thick in the air. The man on the floor had just given us the information we needed, but there was no time to waste. Emily's mother was alive, and she was being held by the cartel. I couldn't even begin to process what that meant for Emily, what it meant for me. The girl who had already been through so much was about to face even more. But there was no turning back now. We need to move, now, I said, my voice sharp and filled with urgency. I turned to Emily, my eyes meeting hers. Are you ready for this? She looked up at me, her face pale but determined. I have to be, she whispered. We have to find her. I nodded, the weight of responsibility settling firmly on my shoulders. This wasn't just about getting her mother back anymore. This was about stopping a dangerous force, a cartel that had already caused too much damage. And if I didn't act quickly, they would destroy everything. Let's go, I said. I turned to the man on the floor. You're coming with us. The man looked up at me, fear evident in his eyes. You don't understand, he said, his voice shaking. They'll kill me. They'll kill both of you. I stepped closer, my hand resting on the hilt of my knife. If you want to live, you'll help us. Otherwise, you're on your own. Take your pick. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting nervously. I can't help you, he said, shaking his head. They'll find me. I leaned down, my face inches from his. If you don't help, I'll let you walk out of here. But you won't make it far. You know that, don't you? He met my gaze, and for a moment, I saw something break in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. Fine. I'll help, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But you have to promise me something. I raised an eyebrow. What? He hesitated before speaking. Promise me you'll get her out of this. Promise me you won't let her get caught up in their mess. I could see the fear in his eyes, but I didn't have time to ask questions. I promise, I said, my voice steady. We'll get her out. But you need to tell us where she is. He took a deep breath before nodding. They're holding her at an old warehouse on the outskirts of town, he said. It's heavily guarded. You won't be able to get in without making some noise. I cursed under my breath. A heavily guarded warehouse. This was getting more complicated by the minute. How many people are inside? I asked. 12, he replied. Maybe more. It's not a place you just walk into. You'll need a plan. 12 people. This was bigger than I had thought. I wasn't sure how we were going to get in, but I couldn't waste any more time. Emily's mother was out there, and I was going to get her back. We'll figure it out, I said. Let's go. We made our way to the door, the man in tow, his eyes darting nervously between us and the street outside. I could tell he was scared, but there was something else in his eyes now, desperation. You're not going to get through this without help, he said as we stepped out into the night. There are people who can help. You need to find them. I stopped in my tracks, turning to face him. What do you mean? He glanced around, making sure no one was listening, before speaking again. There's a network. People who don't care about the law. They're connected to the cartel, yes, but they also don't like how they're running things. You need to find them. I frowned, trying to process what he was saying. How do we find them? He hesitated before answering. I can give you a name, but that's all I can do. I didn't have time to argue. Give me the name, I said, my tone sharp. He hesitated for a moment longer before he spoke. His name is Jacob Diaz. He's a former associate of the cartel, but he's turned on them. If anyone can help you get inside the warehouse, it's him. I nodded, my mind already racing with the possibilities. Jacob Diaz. I didn't know if I could trust him, but I didn't have a choice. Where do we find him? I asked. He owns a small bar on the north side of town, the man said. It's called the Raven's Nest. Go there. He'll know what to do. I turned to Emily, who was watching me carefully. We're going to find your mom, I said, determination in my voice. And we're going to make sure they never hurt you again. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. Let's do this, she said, her voice steady despite the fear that still gripped her. I could feel the weight of the journey ahead, but I was ready. We had a plan now, and I wasn't going to stop until we got Emily's mother back, no matter what it took. I could feel the tension in the air as we pulled up to the bar, the Raven's Nest. The neon sign buzzed faintly in the dark, casting an eerie glow over the parking lot. I wasn't sure what to expect inside, but I knew one thing. This Jacob Diaz was our best shot at getting Emily's mother out of the hellhole she was trapped in. The man who had given us this lead had warned us about Diaz, said he was a former cartel associate who had turned on them, but I still wasn't sure if we could trust him. People like Diaz were dangerous. and anyone who had been connected to the cartel was dangerous. But we had no choice. We had to trust him. I glanced at Emily, who was sitting quietly beside me, her hands clenched in her lap. She was trying to stay strong, but I could see the fear in her eyes. This was her mother we were talking about, someone she barely remembered, someone who had been a ghost in her life for so long. But now she had a chance to find her, and I wasn't going to let anything stand in our way. "Stay close," I said, my voice firm. She nodded, and we both stepped out of the car. The cool night air hit me immediately, but I didn't have time to focus on the chill. The bar was only a few feet away. I could hear the muffled sound of music and chatter from inside. I pushed the door open, the old hinges creaking as we stepped into the dimly lit room. The scent of stale beer and smoke filled the air, a sign of a place that had seen better days. The place was quiet, with only a few patrons scattered around, nursing their drinks in the shadows. I scanned the room, looking for any sign of Jacob Diaz. And then I saw him. He was sitting at the far end of the bar, a tall man with dark hair and a face that had seen its fair share of hard times. He wasn't exactly what I had expected. I thought he'd be someone more intimidating, but there was a calmness about him, a quiet confidence. He looked like someone who knew how to get things done, and knew how to keep his head down when things got too messy. I walked toward him, Emily following close behind me. When Diaz saw us approach, he didn't say a word. He just nodded, acknowledging our presence. I took the seat next to him, and Emily sat next to me, keeping her distance. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I wasn't going to waste any time. "We need your help," I said, my voice low. Diaz didn't flinch, didn't even look at me directly. He just kept his eyes on his drink. "I know who you are," he said finally, his voice rough. "I know why you're here." I leaned in slightly, not wasting a second. "Then you know we don't have time to waste. We need to get to that warehouse. There's a woman there, Emily's mother, and she's in danger. We need your help to get her out." Diaz let out a soft chuckle, but it wasn't a friendly sound. It was more like he was laughing at how naive we were. "You think it's that easy?" he asked, finally turning his head to meet my gaze. "You think I'm just going to walk in and help you just like that?" I didn't answer right away. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but we didn't have any other option. "We don't have a choice," I said, my voice steady. "We need to move fast. If we wait any longer, Emily's mother could be dead." Diaz studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if weighing my words. Then he sighed, the weight of the decision settling over him. "Fine," he said, his voice quieter now. "But this isn't going to be pretty. You're talking about a cartel. They don't let people go without consequences." I didn't care about the consequences. All I cared about was getting Emily's mother out. "We're ready," I said, my tone firm. "We'll do whatever it takes." Diaz nodded, then stood up, signaling for us to follow. He led us through the bar and out the back door, into the alley where his car was parked. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get us to where we needed to go. "We'll go in through the back," Diaz said as he started the engine. "It'll be less guarded, but it's still dangerous. Stay close, and don't make any noise." We got into the car, and as we drove through the dark streets, I couldn't help but feel the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a battle, one we were walking into blindly. But there was no turning back. We had come too far, and I wasn't going to let anything stop us from getting Emily's mother back. The drive felt like it took hours, though I knew it was only a short distance to the warehouse. My thoughts raced, trying to plan our next steps. What if the cartel was waiting for us? What if Diaz had his own agenda? What if we couldn't get out alive? But I pushed those thoughts aside. I couldn't afford to think like that. Not now. Not when Emily's life, and her mother's, depended on us. We arrived at the warehouse, the massive building looming in the darkness. The back entrance was as quiet as Diaz had promised, but the silence was deafening. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. This was it. No turning back now. I could feel the cold, sharp air as we crept toward the warehouse, the darkness of the night wrapping around us like a cloak. Every step I took felt heavier, the weight of the mission pressing down on me. We were on the brink of something big, something dangerous. Diaz was ahead of us, moving with quiet precision. His body language was calm, but I knew that inside, he was calculating every possible outcome. Emily was close behind me, her presence a constant reminder of why we were here. Her eyes were fixed on the building in front of us, a mix of fear and determination etched on her face. This was her mother we were talking about. Her whole world was about to change, and I wasn't going to let her down. Diaz led us to the back entrance, a small steel door that was barely noticeable in the shadows. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the area. "Stay close and stay quiet," he whispered. "Once we're in, we need to move fast. If they know we're here, it'll be too late." We nodded, and I followed him as he unlocked the door. The creak of the hinges echoed in the silence, but Diaz quickly pushed the door open, letting us slip inside. The interior of the warehouse was a vast, empty space, lit only by a few flickering overhead lights. The air smelled of dust, oil, and something more metallic, like blood. My heart rate increased as I scanned the room. It was huge, the kind of place where anything could be hidden. And, right now, we were looking for Emily's mother. We moved quietly through the shadows, each of us stepping with care, the sound of our boots muffled by the thick layer of dust on the floor. I couldn't help but feel the weight of the danger in this place. We were outnumbered, and we didn't know what kind of security was waiting for us. But there was no turning back now. As we moved deeper into the warehouse, I noticed a small office at the far end. The door was cracked open, and through the gap, I could see the faint glow of a desk lamp. I motioned for Diaz to lead the way, and he nodded. We approached cautiously, keeping our backs to the walls, every sense on high alert. The closer we got, the more I could hear voices, low murmurs, not far from the office. It was clear that there were people inside, and it didn't take a genius to figure out who they were. The cartel. Diaz stopped a few feet from the door, signaling for us to wait. He crouched down, peeking through the small crack in the door. I could see his eyes scanning the room beyond. "Two men," he whispered. "We need to move fast. They're not alone." I nodded. "What now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Diaz thought for a moment before answering. "We go in. We take them down quietly. Get to Emily's mom, then get out. No noise, no distractions." My heart was pounding in my chest, but I wasn't going to back down now. I gave Emily a quick glance, making sure she was ready. She nodded, her face set with determination. This wasn't just about rescuing her mother anymore. This was about survival. Diaz opened the door slowly, the hinges barely making a sound. We slipped inside, and I immediately spotted the two men sitting at a desk, deep in conversation. They didn't see us coming. I motioned for Emily to stay back as Diaz and I advanced toward them. I could feel the adrenaline rushing through my veins, and my instincts kicked in. I moved in on the closest man, my hand going to his throat in one swift motion, pulling him back in a chokehold before he could make a sound. He struggled for a moment, but I held firm, using my body weight to overpower him. He went limp within seconds. Diaz was already on the second man, his movements swift and precise. The man didn't have a chance to react before Diaz had him on the ground, his hands gripping the man's throat with a deadly calm. I nodded at Diaz, signaling that we were done. We moved quickly to the back of the office, where a door led to a small hallway. At the end of it, there was another door, this one reinforced with steel. I knew this was it. Emily's mother had to be behind that door. We approached it carefully, the air thick with tension. Diaz put his ear to the door, listening for any sounds inside. After a moment, he turned to me. "She's in there. But there's someone else. Someone we don't want to mess with." I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Diaz hesitated before answering. "The boss. The one behind all of this." My stomach dropped. I knew this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it all too real. "We don't have a choice," I said, my voice firm. "We need to get her out now." Diaz nodded, and with a swift motion, he kicked the door open. The room beyond was small, and in the far corner, I could see her, Emily's mother. She was slumped against the wall, her face bruised and battered, but she was alive. I moved toward her, my heart racing. As I reached her side, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see Diaz's face, his expression grim. "He's coming," he said. I didn't need to ask who he meant. I could already hear the heavy footsteps approaching from the hallway. We had seconds. I grabbed Emily's mother, pulling her to her feet. "We need to go now," I said. But before we could make it to the door, a shadow loomed in the doorway. The boss was here. The door slammed open with a force that shook the room, and there he was, the boss. The man who had been orchestrating everything, the one behind the cartel's hold over Emily and her family. He stood there, his cold eyes scanning the room, his face a mask of calm. But I could see the anger simmering beneath the surface. He knew what was happening. He knew we were here to take Emily's mother. He wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. I moved between him and Emily's mother, my body tense, ready for whatever came next. You think you can just walk in here and take her? The boss's voice was low, dangerous. You don't know what you're messing with. My hand instinctively went to the knife at my side, but I didn't draw it. I wasn't here for a fight. I was here to get them out, and I wasn't going to let this guy stop me. You're not going to hurt her, I said, my voice steady. You're not going to hurt anyone. He smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. Is that so? And what makes you think you can stop me? I could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let it show. I've been to hell and back. You don't scare me, I said, my voice firm. Let her go. Now. The boss took a step forward, his eyes narrowing as he assessed me. You're a fool, he said. You really think you can just walk in here, steal what's mine, and walk out? I didn't have time for his games. You don't own her. You don't own anyone, I said, taking a step toward him. Now move. For a moment, neither of us moved. It felt like the world had stopped. And then, with lightning speed, the boss lunged at me. I reacted instinctively, stepping to the side just as his fist swung toward me. The punch missed, and I grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. He grunted in pain, but he was strong. Too strong. He managed to break free, spinning around and aiming a kick toward my chest. I barely dodged it, but I could feel the force of it in my ribs. The guy was good, but I wasn't going to let him take control. I wasn't going to let him hurt Emily or her mother. Stay back. I shouted to Emily, but I didn't need to say it. She was already moving, trying to pull her mother toward the door. My eyes flicked toward her, just for a second, but that was all the time the boss needed. He took advantage of my distraction, shoving me back and sending me crashing into the wall. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and for a moment, I saw stars. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog from my vision. I couldn't lose. I couldn't let them down. I pushed myself up, ignoring the pain in my body, and looked over at Emily. She was almost at the door, but the boss wasn't done yet. He was already moving toward her, and I knew he wouldn't stop. I wasn't about to let him lay a hand on her. With everything I had left, I rushed forward, tackling the boss before he could reach her. We hit the floor with a crash, and I immediately went for his throat, my hands tightening around it. He struggled beneath me, but I wasn't letting go. You want to hurt her? I hissed through gritted teeth. You're going to have to go through me first. He stopped struggling for a moment, his face turning red as he gasped for air. I could see the panic in his eyes, but I didn't care. I was done with this. Done with him. I squeezed harder. Let her go, I demanded again. Tell me where she is, and I'll let you live. His eyes narrowed, but after a few seconds of silence, he finally spoke, his voice barely audible. She's in the back, behind the steel door. But you're too late. They'll be here any second. I didn't need to hear any more. I shoved him off me, standing up quickly and rushing toward the back of the room. Emily and her mother were just about to reach the door. I could see them. We were almost there. But then, just as we were about to escape, the sound of boots pounding on the concrete floor reached my ears. More of them. More cartel members. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed Emily's mother's hand, pulling her along with me as I ran toward the exit. We weren't going to make it out alive unless we moved fast. I could hear the footsteps behind us, getting closer. We weren't going to outrun them, but we had to try. I turned the corner, adrenaline pumping through my veins as I searched for any way out. The hallway stretched out before me, dark and silent except for the sound of our footsteps. I could hear them gaining on us. There was no time. We had to find a way. Out and fast. Suddenly, I saw it, a small window near the end of the hallway. It was our only chance. We go through there, I said, pointing to the window. Emily looked at me, her face full of fear. But how? She asked, her voice trembling. I'll help you, I said, my voice steady. Now go. I pushed Emily toward the window, urging her to climb through. She hesitated for a moment, but then she nodded, determination setting in her eyes. She scrambled up, pushing herself through the window, and I followed quickly after. But just as I was about to pull Emily's mother through, I heard it. The sound of a gunshot, echoing down the hallway. They were close. Too close. I could feel the cold breeze against my skin as I clambered through the small window, my heart racing in my chest. Emily had already made it through, and I pulled her mother behind me, my hands gripping her tightly. We were almost free, but the sound of the gunshot had thrown everything into chaos. I wasn't sure how much time we had before they caught up to us. The alley outside the warehouse was quiet, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. I looked around, trying to figure out our next move. We couldn't just run blindly into the street. We needed a plan. This way, I said, pulling them both towards a small, narrow side street. I could hear the footsteps behind us, growing louder, closer. My mind raced as I searched for a way out. The alley led to a dead end, but there was a fence at the far end. It wasn't tall, maybe 6 feet, and I knew we could climb it. But Emily's mother wasn't in the best shape, and I wasn't sure she could make it. "Can you climb?" I asked Emily, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. She nodded, her face set with determination. "I'll help my mom," she said, taking her mother's hand. I looked at her, seeing the strength in her eyes. She had come a long way since I first met her, and I was proud of her. But we didn't have time for pride. We had to move. "Stay close," I said, my voice low. "We need to get over that fence and keep moving." Emily's mother nodded, though I could see the strain on her face. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but she had no choice. She had to keep going. I helped them both up to the fence, one at a time, before hoisting myself over. We hit the ground on the other side just as I heard the first shout echo from the warehouse. They had figured out we were gone. My pulse raced as I looked around, trying to gauge our surroundings. We were in a residential neighborhood now, and the houses seemed empty. It was too quiet, too perfect, but I knew better than to think we were safe yet. "We need to keep moving," I urged them, glancing around for any sign of a car. "They'll be here any second." Emily's mother took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the area as she nodded. "Which way?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the strain. I didn't hesitate. "Left. There's a park a few blocks away. We can hide there." We began to run, the weight of the situation pressing on us like a stone, but the fear in Emily's eyes drove me forward. We couldn't stop. Not now. Not until we were safe. The park was just ahead, and we reached it in what felt like seconds, though my legs were burning from the sprint. We ducked into the trees, the darkness swallowing us whole as we crouched down to catch our breath. I could hear the distant sound of sirens now, but they weren't close enough to help us yet. We were on our own. I looked around, scanning the park for any sign of the cartel members, but it was empty. Still, I didn't feel safe. Not yet. Emily's mother sat down on the grass, her breath heavy as she tried to steady herself. "What now?" she asked, looking up at me. I took a deep breath, trying to think clearly. We couldn't stay here forever. We needed to get out of the city, find somewhere safe. But we also needed a plan. "We need to get to the next town," I said, my voice low. "There's a place I know, a safe house. It's about 50 miles away. We can get there and figure out what to do next." Emily looked up at me, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "How will we get there?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my burner phone. I had a contact, someone who could help us get out of the city. I dialed the number quickly, hoping they would pick up. The phone rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "This is Mitch," the voice said. "What do you need?" "We're in trouble," I said quickly, my voice urgent. "We need a ride to the safe house. Can you help us?" There was a brief pause before Mitch spoke again. "I'm on my way. Meet me at the old gas station on Oak Street in 20 minutes. Don't be seen. Keep moving." "Got it," I said, hanging up the phone. I turned to Emily and her mother. "We have a ride. We need to get to Oak Street. Stay low, don't attract attention." We stood up, ready to move again. But as we started walking, I heard the unmistakable sound of a car approaching. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze, my hand reaching for the knife at my side. I turned to Emily. "Stay behind me," I said softly. She nodded, her eyes wide with fear, and I moved forward, ready to face whatever was coming our way. The car turned the corner slowly, its headlights cutting through the darkness. I couldn't see who was inside, but I had a feeling it wasn't good. My pulse quickened as I realized the car was heading straight for us. I could feel my heart pounding as the headlights of the approaching car grew brighter. My mind raced, thinking fast, but there was no time to hide. I quickly scanned the area, looking for any kind of cover, but there was nothing. Just open space and the distant trees, which were too far to reach in time. Emily and her mother were behind me, silent, holding their breath. I could sense their fear, but I couldn't afford to show mine. The car was almost on us now, its engine roaring as it powered forward. I stepped in front of Emily and her mother, trying to shield them as much as possible. My hand went instinctively to the knife at my side, my fingers tightening around the handle. I didn't want to use it. I didn't want to fight. But if it came to that, I wasn't going to back down. The car slowed as it approached us, its headlights blinding for a moment. The tires squealed as it stopped just a few feet away. I braced myself, waiting for the door to open, for whoever was behind this to step out. The door swung open, and a tall man stepped out, his face hidden in the shadows. He wore a dark jacket, the kind that blended into the night. I could tell from the way he moved that he was dangerous. "Get in the car," he said, his voice cold and commanding. I didn't recognize him, but I could tell by the way he spoke that he wasn't just some random thug. He was connected. "We're not going anywhere with you," I said, my voice firm. I stood my ground, not moving an inch. "You can't stop this," he said, his voice low but laced with an unmistakable threat. "The cartel will find you, no matter where you go. You think you can run forever?" I felt a flash of anger rise within me, but I kept my composure. "I'm not running from anyone," I said, my voice steady. "I'm protecting them, and I'll fight to the end to keep them safe." He studied me for a moment, sizing me up, and I could tell he wasn't used to people talking back to him like this. Then, his lips curled into a smirk. "You're a fool," he said, stepping closer. "You really think you can keep running from us? The boss wants her back, and we're not leaving without her." My hand tightened around the knife. I wasn't going to let him hurt them. Not now. Not after everything we had been through. Just as I prepared to take action, I heard the sound of another car approaching. I turned my head for a split second, just enough to see the headlights reflecting off the street. It was too late to run now. The other car was pulling up fast, and there was no way we were going to make it out of here without a fight. The man noticed the second car too. His expression changed instantly, and he cursed under his breath. "Damn it," he muttered, stepping back. "We don't have time for this." He turned toward his car, but I wasn't about to let him leave. Not without answers. "Where's Emily's mother?" I demanded, stepping forward. "Tell me where she is, now." The man paused, glancing over his shoulder, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. "She's in the car," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But if you want her, you're going to have to fight for her." He turned and climbed back into his car without another word. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what he had just said. In the car? Was he lying? Was Emily's mother really inside? Before I could react, the other car pulled up beside us, and the door swung open. Another man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, his face covered by a hood. This one was different, more professional, more composed. He didn't speak at first, just observed us, sizing up the situation. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "You've made a big mistake," the man said finally, his voice calm but menacing. "You really think you can just take her and leave?" I didn't know who this man was, but I could tell by the way he spoke that he wasn't just a muscle for hire. He was someone important. "We're leaving with her," I said, my voice steady but firm. "And if you try to stop us, I'll make sure you regret it." The man smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "You're not in charge here," he said, stepping closer. "You're playing a dangerous game, and the people you're dealing with are not the kind who let anyone walk away. You won't get far." I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins, but I didn't let the fear take over. I had come too far to back down now. "I'm not afraid of you," I said, my voice low, barely a whisper. "I'm protecting them, and nothing you do will stop me." The man didn't respond right away. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. The air between us was thick with tension, and I could feel the standoff growing more dangerous by the second. Emily was behind me, her breath shallow with fear, but I knew she was counting on me. I couldn't let her down now. The man finally spoke, his voice softer, almost sympathetic. "You're in way over your head," he said, shaking his head. "This isn't your fight. But if you're determined to make it yours, fine. Let's see how far you get." He turned and waved his hand, signaling to someone in the car. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew it wasn't good. I watched as the man gestured towards the car, and the door opened. My heart stopped for a moment. There, in the back seat, sat Emily's mother. She looked tired, bruised, but alive. That's all that mattered. My breath caught in my throat as I moved forward, determined to reach her, but the man stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "She's not going anywhere," he said, his voice cold. You think you can just walk in here and take her? I didn't flinch. I wasn't about to back down now. I had come too far. I'm taking her, I said, my voice firm. And you're not going to stop me. The man's eyes narrowed, his hand twitching near his waist. I could feel the tension building, but I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. This was the moment. The man sized me up for a second, and then he let out a sharp laugh. You think you're the hero, he mocked. You're nothing more than a pawn in a much bigger game. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I had made up my mind. Emily's mother was getting out of here, and nothing was going to stop me. The man made a move as if to reach for something in his jacket. My instincts kicked in. I lunged forward, grabbing his wrist before he could get the upper hand. We struggled briefly, but I managed to twist his arm behind his back, forcing him to the ground. I didn't waste time checking if he was still a threat. I turned to Emily's mother, who had begun to stand. Her face was pale, but her eyes were filled with gratitude. We're getting you out of here, I said, offering her my hand. She took it, her grip weak but steady. As she stepped out of the car, I could see the exhaustion in her movements, but there was something else, relief. She wasn't trapped anymore. We're going to the safe house, I told her. Everything's going to be okay. Emily's mother nodded, but before we could move, the sound of footsteps approaching fast made me freeze. The boss. He was back, and he was not alone. I glanced at Emily. Get ready, I whispered. Emily nodded, her face set with determination. She was no longer the scared girl who had been thrown into this nightmare. She was stronger now. The boss emerged from the shadows with 2 more men flanking him. He looked furious, but there was something else in his eyes, desperation. I'm not letting you walk away with her, the boss snarled. His voice was low, threatening. I didn't back down. You're not in charge anymore, I said, my voice calm. It's over. The boss laughed, the sound bitter and filled with venom. You think it's that easy? He sneered. You think you can just waltz in, take her and leave? I stepped forward, blocking Emily and her mother behind me. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Because I'm not letting you control her anymore. The boss's face twisted in rage. You're making a mistake, he said, his hand going to his waistband. My heart raced, but I stayed calm. I could see the gun before he even pulled it. He was quick, but not quick enough. I lunged forward, knocking his arm to the side just as he aimed at Emily's mother. The gunshot rang out, but it missed. The boss staggered back, surprised by my quick reflexes. I didn't hesitate. I punched him hard, sending him stumbling to the ground. The 2 men flanking him were already moving, but they weren't fast enough. Diaz, who had been quietly observing from the side, made his move, taking down one of the men with a swift kick to the side. The other man pulled a knife, but I was already on him. I dodged his swing, grabbing his wrist and twisting it until the knife dropped to the ground. With a quick motion, I slammed my elbow into his back, knocking him to the dirt. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, but I didn't stop. We didn't have time for a fight. The boss was already getting to his feet, blood dripping from his mouth, his face twisted in pain and fury. You think you've won? He spat. You think this is over? I looked at him, not out of fear but pity. It's over for you, I said. You're finished. I turned to Emily and her mother. Let's go. Now. We didn't look back. We couldn't afford to. I knew the cartel wasn't going to let us get away so easily. But for now, we were free. The safe house was close. It was our only chance to get out of this alive. We ran, the sounds of the fight still ringing in the air behind us. We had made it this far, and I wasn't about to let anything stop us now. I could hear the sound of the sirens growing closer, but we couldn't stop now. We had to get to the safe house. Every second felt like an eternity as we ran through the darkened streets. Emily and her mother were keeping pace behind me, their breathing labored but steady. We had made it this far, but the danger wasn't over. The cartel was still after us, and the boss would send more men after us. They wouldn't stop until they had Emily's mother back. I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything we had been through. We turned a corner, and the safe house came into view. It was just an old, run-down building, but it was our refuge. It was the only place where we could regroup, plan our next move. As we approached the door, I signaled for Emily and her mother to stay back while I checked for any signs of danger. I crouched down, peering through the small window. Everything looked clear. I opened the door quietly, ushering them inside. The air was thick with tension, but there was a sense of relief too. For the first time in days, we were safe. I closed the door behind us, locking it securely. We were in, but I knew it wouldn't be long before the cartel found us. I turned to Emily and her mother. Stay here. I'll make sure the place is secure. Emily nodded, her face pale but determined. She was trying to stay strong, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Her mother looked worn out too, but she was still holding it together. What now? She asked, her voice hoarse. I didn't have all the answers. I couldn't promise them that everything was going to be okay, but I could promise them this. I would protect them. I would keep them safe. We wait, I said, my voice calm. We stay here, lay low, and we plan our next move. I walked to the back of the house, checking every window, every door, making sure everything was locked tight. The house was small, and the furniture was old, but it was enough for now. It was a place to breathe, to think. As I finished securing the windows, I walked back to Emily and her mother, who were sitting on the old couch in the living room. We can't stay here long, I said, sitting down across from them. The cartel will send more people. They won't stop until they get what they want. Emily's mother sighed, her hands trembling as she clasped them together in her lap. What if they come here? What do we do then? I looked at her, meeting her gaze. We fight, I said simply. We fight to survive. Emily looked up at me, her voice barely above a whisper. What if we can't fight? What if we're too weak? She sounded scared, and I couldn't blame her. She was just a kid, caught in the middle of something she didn't understand. I reached across the table, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than you think, I said, my voice steady. You're already stronger than most people I know, and we're not going to let them take you, or your mom. I promise you that. Emily looked at me for a long moment, and I could see the fear slowly start to fade from her eyes. She nodded, though I could tell she was still scared. But there was a glimmer of hope in her expression now. She trusted me. That was all that mattered. I stood up, walking to the window again, checking the street outside. The last thing we needed was to be caught off guard. The sound of a car engine rumbled in the distance, and my heart skipped a beat. I pressed my ear to the window, listening intently. It was getting closer. I couldn't tell who it was, but I had a feeling we weren't alone anymore. I turned back to Emily and her mother. We need to go? Now. I didn't wait for them to respond. I moved quickly, grabbing Emily's hand and pulling her to her feet. Come on, we're not staying here. Where are we going? Emily asked, her voice shaking. I could see the fear rising again, and I couldn't blame her. But we didn't have time to explain. We had to move. We're going to keep running, I said, my voice firm. And we're not stopping until we're safe. We hurried out of the house, not looking back. I led them through the dark streets, staying low, trying to avoid being seen. The car engine I had heard earlier was now close enough for me to make out. It wasn't just one car. There were two. I could see the headlights approaching, and I knew we were running out of time. We needed to find shelter again. Fast. I pulled Emily and her mother into an alley, holding my breath as the cars drove past, their headlights slicing through the darkness. I waited, listening as the sound of the engines faded. I glanced at Emily, her face pale but determined. We had to keep going. We'll head for the docks, I said, nodding toward the distant lights. There's a warehouse there. We'll lay low for the night, regroup, and then figure out our next move. Emily nodded, and we began walking toward the docks. I could feel the weight of everything pressing on me, but I wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not after everything we had been through. The dock was a few miles away, but we couldn't risk stopping until we got there. Every step felt heavier, but I kept moving, knowing we were close. We just had to make it to the safe house before they found us. The night was far from over. I led them through the shadows, the distant lights of the dock growing brighter as we moved closer. My heart was pounding, each step heavier than the last. We couldn't afford to stop. Not now. We had made it this far, but the danger was still close behind. The cartel wasn't going to let us slip away that easily. I glanced at Emily and her mother, both of them moving as quickly as they could, but I could see the exhaustion in their faces. Emily was holding her mother's hand tightly, her eyes scanning the darkened streets around us, every sound making her jump. She was scared, but there was something else in her eyes, determination. She had come a long way from the frightened girl I had first met. Now, she was stronger. We were stronger together. Keep moving, I whispered, my voice low, almost a growl. We were getting closer to the docks, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I could hear the faint sound of tires on the pavement, and my instincts screamed at me to move faster. We weren't alone. They were close. The sound of a car engine echoed in the distance. But this time, it wasn't just one car. It was two. I didn't wait for them to get closer. I turned down a narrow alley, pulling Emily and her mother behind me. The alley was dark, with only a sliver of light from the street lamps, but it was better than being out in the open. We crouched down, keeping as still as possible, my breath shallow as I listened. The cars were getting closer, but they weren't slowing down. I could hear them turning onto the street we had just left. The sound of the engines was deafening now, and I knew they were right behind us. The only thing we had going for us was the darkness. It was our only chance. I turned to Emily, my hand on her shoulder. "Stay here, don't move," I said, my voice steady despite the rising panic inside me. I motioned for her mother to stay close, and then I carefully crept forward to peek around the corner. I needed to know how many of them were out there. The headlights from the cars illuminated the street, casting long shadows on the walls. I counted 4 figures, 2 in each car, all of them armed. This wasn't just a few cartel thugs anymore. They were hunting us. The boss must have sent reinforcements. I turned back to Emily and her mother, my mind racing. We couldn't stay here much longer. They would find us if we did. We had to keep moving. I made a snap decision. "We're going to make a run for it," I said, my voice calm but firm. "There's a small warehouse down the way. If we can get there, we'll have a chance to lose them in the maze of buildings. Stay close." I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her gently, but urgently, in the direction of the warehouse. Her mother was right behind us, moving as fast as she could, but I could see the fatigue in her movements. Every step felt like it took everything out of her. We made our way toward the warehouse, staying low, slipping between the buildings, avoiding the main streets. The sound of the cars faded for a moment, but I knew it wouldn't be long before they figured out where we were. I could feel the pressure mounting. Each second felt like it could be our last. When we reached the warehouse, I pushed open a side door, just enough to slip through, and I motioned for Emily and her mother to follow. We were inside. The door closed behind us, and the darkness swallowed us whole. I paused for a moment, letting my eyes adjust to the low light, listening intently for any sounds from the street. I could hear the faint hum of the wind outside, but nothing else. We were safe, for now. I turned to Emily and her mother. "Stay here," I said, my voice low. "I'm going to check if they're still out there." I didn't wait for an answer. I moved toward a small window at the far end of the warehouse, careful not to make a sound. I crouched down, peering through the dusty glass. The street outside was empty, the cars gone. I breathed a sigh of relief, but I wasn't going to let my guard down. Not yet. I turned back to Emily and her mother. "We're safe," I said, my voice steady. "For now." Emily looked at me, her face pale but grateful. "What now?" she asked, her voice soft. I glanced around the warehouse, trying to come up with a plan. "We wait," I said. "We rest for a while. Then we'll figure out our next move." We sat down on the floor, trying to make ourselves as comfortable as possible. The tension in the air was thick, but at least for a moment, we could breathe. I knew this wasn't over. The cartel was still out there, and they were still looking for us. But for now, we were safe. And that was enough. Emily's mother leaned against the wall, her eyes closed as she tried to regain some strength. Emily sat beside her, her hand in her mother's, her eyes never leaving me. I could see the questions in her eyes, the uncertainty, the fear of what was coming next. But there was something else too. A spark of hope, a belief that we could make it through this. And that was all I needed to keep moving forward. We had made it this far. We weren't stopping now. The hours passed like a blur. We had been holed up in the warehouse for what felt like days, but it was only a few hours at most. The sounds of sirens had faded into the distance, and for the first time in what felt like forever, we were allowed to breathe. I kept a sharp eye on the street outside through the dusty window, but everything seemed calm. The cartel had no idea where we were, at least, not yet. I turned away from the window and walked back toward Emily and her mother. They were sitting together, trying to make themselves comfortable on the cold, concrete floor. Emily's head was resting on her mother's shoulder, and I could see the exhaustion in both of their eyes. But there was something else there too, relief. I walked over to them, crouching down so we were eye level. "We'll need to leave soon," I said softly. "But we're safe for now." Emily nodded but didn't say anything. She was tired. We all were. But the journey wasn't over yet. We still had a long way to go. The weight of everything that had happened hung in the air, but I had made a promise. I would keep them safe, no matter what it took. I glanced at Emily's mother, whose face was pale but determined. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. She met my gaze, and for the first time in days, she smiled. A small, tired smile, but it was a smile. "I will be," she said quietly. "We'll be okay, as long as we're together." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. We had been through hell, but we were still standing. And that was something. I looked out the window again, scanning the street for any signs of danger, but the night was eerily quiet. It felt like the calm before the storm, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. The cartel would send more men. It was only a matter of time. I turned back to Emily and her mother. "We're going to keep moving," I said, my voice firm. "I know it's been hard, but we need to stay one step ahead. The farther we get, the better." Emily nodded, her face serious. She had grown up so much in the past few days. I had seen it in her eyes. She was no longer the frightened child who had stumbled into this nightmare. She was a fighter, just like me. "Let's go," she said softly, her voice filled with determination. I helped her mother to her feet, then turned back to check the street one last time. Nothing. It was time to go. I motioned for them to follow me, and we slipped out of the warehouse, moving quickly and silently through the alleys. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't feel it. My mind was focused on one thing: keeping them safe. We didn't stop until we reached the edge of the city, where the lights were faint and the streets empty. We found an old diner that had long since closed for the night. It wasn't much, but it would do. I checked the parking lot to make sure no one was watching, then led them inside. The diner was dark and smelled of stale coffee, but it was a safe place to rest for now. I took a seat at the booth and looked across at Emily and her mother. They both looked exhausted, but they had made it this far. "We'll stay here for the night," I said, my voice low. "We need to plan our next move." Emily's mother nodded, but I could see the worry still etched in her face. "What happens next?" she asked. "Where do we go from here?" I leaned forward, my hands on the table, thinking about our options. "We need to get out of the country," I said finally. "We can't stay here. The cartel won't stop. But I have a contact, someone who can help us get to safety." Emily looked up at me, her eyes full of questions. "Who?" she asked. "A friend of mine. He runs a shipping business out of the coast. I trust him. He can get us out of here, but it's going to take some time to set it up." I saw the hesitation in her eyes. She wanted to believe me, but I could tell she was scared. We all were. The weight of everything was bearing down on us, and the road ahead was uncertain. But I wasn't going to let her down. I wasn't going to let them down. "We'll be okay," I said softly, meeting Emily's gaze. "I'll make sure of it." The look in her eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of hope. It was small, but it was there, and that was all we needed to keep moving forward. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "For everything." I nodded, standing up. "We'll get through this. Together." As I walked toward the door to check the street again, I felt a sense of determination settle over me. The fight wasn't over. But we had survived this far, and we weren't giving up now. The cartel might still be out there, but we were ready. We had to be. We were in this until the end. In this thrilling tale of danger and survival, the gripping world of Hell Angels stories unfolds as a determined biker, ready to protect those in need, faces off against a powerful cartel. As the story builds, we see the biker's journey intertwine with the lives of Emily and her mother, two women caught in a perilous game they never asked to play. Hell Angels stories often dive into the raw, untold struggles of tough individuals facing impossible odds, and this narrative does just that. With each heart-pounding twist and turn, the story intensifies as they make daring escapes and face life-threatening challenges. As they fight their way to safety, every step brings them closer to uncovering the truth behind their relentless pursuers. These Hell Angels stories are not just about crime and survival, but about the human spirit's ability to endure when everything seems lost. The stakes rise higher as they escape from the cartel's grasp, showing how far a bond of trust can go in the most dangerous of situations. Each decision could be their last, but it's the bikers' grit and determination that keep them fighting. As the plot reaches its explosive climax, the power of family and resilience shines through, proving that no matter the cost, the fight for freedom will never end. This latest chapter in Hell Angels stories will keep you on the edge of your seat, eager to see how this thrilling journey unfolds and whether these survivors will finally break free or fall to the cartel's deadly reach.